Good morning. I'd like to talk today about maintaining your sanity while working from home. We're all in a very unprecedented situation in that we all have to work from home. Um, Now, if you've taken online classes before, you've sort of done this. If you've had a remote work position, you've sort of dealt with this. But we've never before had to take all of our face-to-face and hybrid classes and shove them online. At the same time, we're all locked into our own homes. Um, I've actually dealt with not this situation, of course, because this is, as I said, completely unprecedented. Something like this, in that for a couple of years while I was working for Wavecrest in Abilene, I had to work from home. I was on a project for a client who had specific expectations and requirements, in point of fact, about the networks that how the contractor networks could be configured. And if those contractor networks were not configured in such a way, the remote contractor networks weren't configured just so, the people working for said remote contractors, the companies that provided the remote contractors, in which case that means me, those people had to work from home. So every day for 18 months or 2 years, I worked from home. I got up, I went down the hall to the kitchen, the living room, I ate breakfast, I came back, I logged in using a VPN. I actually wore out, or actually not so much wore out, they expire. Um, you might have talked in class about, or you may in your Security Plus class talk about RSA keys and multi-factor authentication. Um, I went through at least two, possibly three RSA hard tokens. So I got really familiar with how those synchronized tokens work. They went from hard tokens to soft tokens. I had one guy that I could talk to if my company laptop died, and I had to ship it to New Jersey. In any case, I don't want to get too off my point. I understand how this works, and more to the point, I understand how it can stop working correctly. Um, there's 2 points that I want to make. Two things that you need to bear in mind as you try to make this work for as long as this goes on. Hopefully, we will be back face to face within the month. Um, and then we can have a reasonably normal summer and a normal fall term. But what if that doesn't happen? What if there's a second or a third wave of this corona thing? How do you deal with that? How do you deal with the fact that um, you're going to school um, and staying at home all at the same time? And you have limited opportunities to leave and lots of places you can't go and yada, yada, yada. 2 points. First, prioritize. Um, remember, Remember why you're doing what you're doing. Remember why you came to school in the first place, why you want this degree, why you are learning these skills. What brings you here? You're building your own career for yourself, for your family, because you have specific expectations on how to use this career, whether you want to get into the digital side of law enforcement or go into security, consulting, design, research, whether you want to be a certified ethical hacker, or you just think computers are cool, networks are interesting, but hey, every time I turn on the news, somebody's suffered a data breach. Let's figure out how this works. Um, Remember why you're doing what you're doing, so that when you have to make value judgments and cost benefit decisions, you can weigh these things correctly. And the other thing you need to think about is that as much a priority as this is and ought to be, there are higher priorities. Um, if you're doing this just to get a good job, that's great. if you're doing this to get a good job so you can provide for your family, the real priority there is not the education. It is not the job. It's the family. Um, so remember not just what you're doing, why you're doing it, who you're doing it for. Be willing to adapt, because you may be at home working as a student, and having you may have a job. If you can still work in the current economy, that's great. If your employer has noticed, hey, he doesn't have to go to school the way he normally does, I can make him work normal hours. Okay, deal with that. If you have to do your schoolwork at ODark 30, which is a military term for the dead of the night, any period between about 0030 hours and 0330 hours, like I said, the dead of the night. If you have to do your schoolwork at ODark 30, fine. If you can't work, but you've got kids who are still in school, um, and they need you between 8 and noon so they can do schoolwork, fine. Um, Maybe you're technically in a class of mine that meets between 8 and noon. If you're teaching your kids, that's more important, because what you're doing with me, you can do at ODark 30. Your kids don't need to be up at ODark 30. They should probably be in bed at times when you could still be up studying productively. Um, your kids need your families need you, your pets need you, you need your pets. I can't remember, I've probably lost count of the number of times that on these videos that I've been making recently, you've heard my dog in the background. Or the dog will literally jump up into my lap, because the dog is of the opinion that if I'm working at my desk, she belongs in my lap. It's just who she is. Um, if you have to if you have to completely rearrange your schedule, not simply because so you can take the studies that you need to do for your coursework at TSTC and move them into the off hours. If you need to rearrange your schedule even more, so that you take one course and dial in on it, say you're in, okay, y'all are probably second semester. Oh yeah, if you're in my Linux class, you're probably also in TCP/IP. If you need to just spend a week just doing nothing but TCP/IP and get it done, so then you can spend the next week doing nothing but Linux and get it done, that's fine. A lot of students who are in online programs, particularly if their instructors don't make a habit of opening and closing modules to keep everybody kind of on pace with each other, if you just study intensively on one program and then shift to another and then shift to another, that's, I mean, not program, course, that's okay. So if you need to do that, go for it. You should tell your instructor that that's what you're doing, so your instructor won't get worried that if your instructor looks at the learning management system and realizes that student A hasn't logged into my course in a week and a half, I haven't seen him on the chats or hangout meetings, or he hasn't submitted anything, your instructor was going to get worried. Either get worried or decide that you've stopped caring. So that issue doesn't arise. Let your instructor know if you're planning to focus on a single course. Because frankly, those of us who have to do professional development, take courses in our own time, sometimes we can manage to do it off hours, and sometimes in the world of professional education, for those of us who are in the workforce and need a new skill set, what we'll do is not take an entire semester to take a course. You'll go somewhere and for a week, for say a 40-hour course, you'll do one thing, just that, for that 1 week. Say a week of intensive study for a new certification or a new programming language or a new uh, uh, database administration system or what have you. So we understand a week of focused study on a single topic. The other thing you need to do is compartmentalize. Understand that, yeah, you have a work life and a home life, and they just so happen to be stacked right on top of each other right now, which is, of course, not a really good thing. Um, so, one of the things that I had trouble with way back when was that my work life bled over into my home life. Yeah, it was really convenient to have a 30-second commute, to walk across the hall from my bedroom to my office. But on the same token, I was walking across the hall between my bedroom and my office. And really and truly, you need to be able to wall these things off sometimes. So, treat work like work. Step one, get dressed. Um, you don't have to dress for work exactly the same way. Say, for example, and of course, unless you're doing remote work on video conferences and your clients expect to see you in a suit and tie. Um, if that's the case, then that's what you do. Um, so you should adapt a little. Say, for example, take this example, and I'm not telling you to do anything I'm not doing. Let me show you this. Um, See, I usually wear pants. I usually wear jeans when I'm teaching. You've seen me most of the time in the classroom in a collared shirt, unless it's a Friday. Um, but even here, I'm not working in my pajamas. And I haven't worked in my pajamas because, in my opinion, that would be unprofessional. Um, the other thing is you set a schedule. Figure out when you're working. Do your work in those hours. Then, if you're not in those hours, close the laptop, close the door, leave. Um, don't eat at your desk. Um, this is frankly something I'm not actually all that good at school, to be really honest with you. Um, but in order to compartmentalize correctly, you're, you're you really ought to go eat someplace else. Even if it's on a meal tray in front of the television in the living room. That is better than eating at your desk. For one thing, computers and messy food are a bad combination. For another, if you never mentally disengage from the work, um, it will eat your life. Let's see. Let's see to do, yeah. Other and along with getting dressed, all the other normal personal hygiene stuff. Comb your hair, brush your teeth, change your socks, etc. Um, so that we do this because there's a lot of what we're doing that is kind of implicit in how we're dressed. Um, think about think about it this: would you dream of um, going to a job interview in your pajamas? No. Going to a job interview in your pajamas tells the potential employer that you're not really interested in that job. You have no respect for him. Possibly you have no respect for yourself. You wouldn't do it. Um, would you go take, would you build a snowman? Let's presume for a moment that we have snow. It's snow. Would you go out to build a snowman in a bathing suit? No. It's the wrong. It is the way you dress has an impact on the attitude you have toward the activity you're doing. That's why some folks um, dress up for church because they consider it a necessary part of showing respect for God, for the act of worship itself, etc. So think about how you're dressing. Make sure that you're dressing for what you want to do. Um, so I hope this helps.